In a peaceful galaxy where violence is a forgotten nightmare, young Roxy struggles to find a worthy science project for her ecology expo. When she discovers a mysterious human locked away as a dangerous relic, she sees a chance to change everything. Humans are the galaxy's ultimate boogeymen, feared, misunderstood, and survivors of a harsh, violent world long gone. Together, Roxy and the human named Jeff will challenge the galaxy's perfect peace, teaching that sometimes you must face fear and danger head-on to protect what you love. This story is full of tension, emotion, and surprises. It asks what it means to be strong when the universe around you is silent and still, and what it costs to be the monster that keeps other monsters away. Roxy's heart beat faster as she moved through the silent halls of the Zoological Enforcement Sanctuary. The place was like a prison disguised as a peaceful refuge. Brightly lit habitats lined the corridors, each home to strange creatures from distant worlds. Some were gentle, glowing plants that made the air feel soft and alive. Others were fierce beasts locked behind thick glass. But Roxy didn't have time to admire the displays. She was on a mission. The Xenoecology Youth Expo was only days away, and Roxy still had no project. Her fern had burned, a disaster no one could explain. The judges had given her mandatory calm sessions to teach her patience. But patience felt useless. She needed something extraordinary, something no one else had. Her stolen access card beeped softly as she entered the restricted section. The air grew colder here. The walls were bare metal, cold and unwelcoming. No soft lights, no soothing colors, just a long corridor ending in a single door. It had no official markings, only the words, "Do not open," scratched into the metal. Every child in the Aderan Commonwealth knew to leave these doors closed. They held nightmares no one dared face. But Roxy was desperate. She swiped her card and entered the code she had memorized during a boring family dinner. The door hissed open. Inside was a small chamber with a clear containment pod. The kind used to trap dangerous things that no one wanted loose. And inside, something small stirred. It wasn't what Roxy expected. Not a huge beast or a glowing terror. Just a man. He was lean but strong, wearing torn clothes stained by time and battle. His skin was covered in scars that told stories she couldn't read yet. Dark hair fell in messy strands, and his eyes, those eyes, were a storm of ancient pain and sharp intelligence. He looked up slowly, meeting her gaze. "Either the drugs finally worked, or you're the weirdest rescue crew I've ever had," he said with a dry laugh. Roxy blinked. The man spoke in her language, his voice rough but clear. "I'm Roxy," she said, her voice trembling. The man smiled, showing too many teeth for comfort. "Name's Jeff. Formerly human, current specimen, future problem. Looks like you need a science project." Roxy hesitated. Everything inside her screamed that this was dangerous. But Jeff moved with careful grace, as if ready for any attack. The cage wasn't enough to hold him. And somehow, she understood that he was more than a monster. He was a survivor. She tapped on her tablet, opening the sanctuary's adoption interface. The system wasn't made for sentient beings, but budget cuts left loopholes open. She swiped the confirmation. "Want to be my project?" Jeff studied her for a long moment, weighing risks and chances. Then, with a grin sharp as a knife, he said, "What's the worst that could happen?" Getting Jeff out was easier than she feared. The night staff, tired and understaffed, waved them through after she babbled about medical emergencies. Jeff played his part well, pretending pain, making low sounds that could have been laughter. But Roxy felt the tension coiled in his muscles. The way he kept exits in sight, always watching, always ready. Back in her home, Jeff took over the top floor, claiming it like territory. He didn't relax, even in sleep. One eye would crack open, always alert. Roxy tried to make him comfortable. She gave him a leash, a biomonitor collar with mild restraints disguised as a leash. Jeff was unimpressed. Used to collars, he said. Usually ones that explode if you run too far. They spent hours fixing broken things in her small apartment. Jeff worked with tools he fashioned from her old makeup kit, coaxing her dead homework drone back to life. How do you know how to do this? She asked. Same way you know how to breathe, he replied. Humans fix things. Sometimes we break them first, just for the fun. Days passed. Jeff taught Roxy about humans, how they could eat almost anything, sweat when hot, cry when sad, and bleed without noticing. Most surprising was how humans lived with fear. Constant fear. Not spikes or moments, but steady, quiet terror. That's anxiety, Jeff explained. We've made it part of life. We use fear as fuel. The expo day arrived. Jeff stood beside Roxy, dressed in a suit patched together from odd pieces of fabric. The hall was filled with students and judges from dozens of worlds, their biomonitors flickering with alarm at Jeff's presence. He smiled, a sharp, dangerous grin that froze many in place. Roxy began her presentation. This is Jeff. A human from Earth. A planet classified as a Category 12 death world. She showed images of a blue and green planet covered in violence and survival. The audience gasped as statistics rolled past: deadly atmosphere, hostile creatures, zero survival without preparation. Jeff added dry commentary: we're not the smartest or the strongest, but we survived. We turned fear into art. We took poison and made it a flavor. We thrive on things that should kill us. To prove his point, Jeff bit into a ghost pepper, tears streaming down his face. The crowd watched in horrified fascination. Suddenly, alarms blared. Drones swarmed the entrance, their lights flashing red. Security officers rushed in, shouting orders. Jeff moved instantly, weaving through the chaos, carrying Roxy as they dodged drones and officers. Stay low, Jeff whispered. They're amateurs. Watch the gap. Roxy followed, heart pounding. Together, they fought not with weapons but with movement and wits. Drones collided, some crashing into a sculpture that devoured one with eerie grace. Roxy reached a maintenance panel and slipped into the service corridor, working quickly to change the station's environment. Lights shifted to red, temperatures dropped, gravity fluctuated. The drones faltered. Jeff used the chaos to protect Roxy, taking hits from containment fields but pushing forward. They escaped into the station's hidden passages, moving deeper into the heart of the station. As Jeff recovered, he spoke softly. Your people don't know what to do with monsters. You think peace means safety. It doesn't. It means forgetting how to fight. Roxy listened, understanding growing inside her. Peace was fragile, and sometimes you needed monsters to keep worse monsters away. Together, they would teach the galaxy that survival meant more than calm days. It meant courage, fear, and the will to be terrible when needed. The corridors of Samara's station were quiet as Roxy and Jeff moved deeper into the hidden sections. The tension in the air was thick, not just from their recent escape, but from the weight of what Jeff had said. Peace was a thin glass, easy to shatter. And the galaxy had forgotten how to fight. Jeff limped slightly, but his eyes were sharp, always watching. I've seen what happens when a peaceful world meets real danger. They freeze. They panic. They get eaten alive, he said quietly. Your people have trained to avoid conflict. That's not the same as being safe. Roxy nodded. She had grown up in a world where conflict was a bad memory, a nightmare told in stories. But Jeff's stories were different. Real. Brutal. They shook her. At the station's upper levels, the council chambers buzzed with emergency meetings. The human's presence had thrown centuries of calm into chaos. Counselor Yorit paced nervously, her biomonitor flashing warning colors. She argued with her peers, some terrified, some fascinated. Could the human be controlled? Could he be trusted? Back in the shadows, Jeff opened a hidden door. Inside was a room filled with strange containment pods. Each held something even stranger than the last. Glowing crystals that hummed with unseen energy, creatures with too many limbs, and shapes that seemed to shift and breathe like living shadows. Jeff walked among them, muttering. Too peaceful. Too obvious. Too hungry. Finally, he stopped before one pod, marked with a warning in 12 languages, do not release under any circumstances. That means you, Gerald, Jeff said with a crooked smile. Roxy frowned. Who's Gerald? No idea, Jeff admitted, but I like his style. With practiced hands, Jeff began unlocking the pod. Inside, a fog-like entity began to emerge. It wasn't a creature of flesh or metal. It was bureaucracy itself, a sentient cloud of paperwork and rules from the Proxima system. It moved like mist but made sounds like 10,000 forms being filled out incorrectly. Hi, Jeff said calmly. The Commonwealth upstairs is trying to arrest me without proper documentation. Thought you might want to know. The fog paused, then moved toward the elevator. Its presence was terrifying. It meant chaos in the halls of order. Roxy watched, amazed. Jeff wasn't just a survivor, he was a force that bent the galaxy's rules. As the fog moved through the station, security forces scrambled, drowning in paperwork and confusion. Roxy and Jeff used the distraction to catch their breath. Jeff smiled tiredly. Violence is easy. Making problems solve themselves, that's art. The quiet moment didn't last. Alarms blared again as drones and officers returned, more prepared this time. Jeff braced himself. We need to move. They slipped through service shafts, old maintenance tunnels, and forgotten rooms. Jeff taught Roxy to think like a human in danger, watch, wait, find cracks in the system, then strike. At one point, Jeff stopped by a biohazard door. Behind it were creatures the Commonwealth couldn't even name. Jeff moved between pods like a shopper in a market. Humans are the scariest thing that tells jokes, he muttered. Roxy shivered but followed. In one small room, they found remnants of Earth's legacy, plants that burned without fire, animals that could survive poison, machines left behind. Jeff spoke softly, we broke our home. Fought each other until there was nothing left but fear. She realized then that Jeff carried centuries in his eyes, pain, loss, and a fierce will to survive. Their escape was near, but the station wasn't done with them. Security forces regrouped, flooding corridors with drones and stun weapons. Jeff's muscles coiled like springs. Time to show them what you've learned, he said, eyes glinting. The fight was brutal but clever. Jeff used the environment, turning the station's own systems against their attackers. Gravity shifts, temperature drops, and confusing light changes disoriented the drones. Officers stumbled over each other. One drone crashed into a sentient sculpture, which swallowed it whole. Roxy scrambled to a maintenance panel, her hands moving quickly to disable security systems. Jeff protected her, taking electric shocks from containment fields. His body burned but he pushed through. Together, they escaped into the station's labyrinth, hearts pounding, breaths short. As they paused in a quiet corner, Jeff looked at her. You're stronger than you think, kid. Humans survive because we fight when we have to. And sometimes, that means being the monster. Roxy swallowed hard. She had never thought of monsters as protectors before. That night, in her small room, Jeff brewed a strange drink, coffee, bitter and harsh. He offered her a cup. It tastes like burnt determination, she said, taking a careful sip. Jeff laughed, a sound rough but genuine. Welcome to humanity. We turned suffering into art. As they sat, staring out at the endless stars, Roxy felt something new. Fear was still there, but now it had a purpose. The galaxy's perfect peace was fragile. But maybe, with Jeff's lessons, it could survive. The next morning, the school's presentation hall buzzed with nervous energy. Hundreds of students from across the galaxy gathered to share their projects. Roxy stood beside Jeff, her heart pounding but her voice steady. Jeff wore a patched-up jumpsuit that looked like something stolen from 100 different worlds, but to Roxy, he was perfect. The moment they entered, silence fell. Biomonitors on the walls flickered wildly, scanning Jeff as if he might explode. Some students stepped back, others stared in disbelief. Jeff smiled that sharp, dangerous grin of his, unbothered by the attention. Roxy began, her voice clear and strong. "This is Jeff. He is human. From Earth, a planet called a Category 12 Death World." She clicked to a screen showing Earth's blue oceans and green forests, a world beautiful but deadly. Earth was filled with danger. Every breath risked poison. Every step could be your last. But humans survived. More than that, they thrived. They turned fear into power. Jeff added, "We're not the fastest, strongest, or smartest. But we don't stop. We adapt. We make fire when it's cold, ice when it's hot, and friends when there are predators." The crowd watched, fascinated and frightened. To prove his point, Jeff bit into a ghost pepper, its fiery heat bringing tears to his eyes. The audience gasped and whispered. "Why?" one student asked. "Because fear can be fuel," Jeff said through the pain. "We take what should kill us and make it a challenge. That's how we survive." Suddenly, alarms screamed through the hall. Security drones poured in, lights flashing red. Officers shouted orders. The calm order of the expo shattered. Jeff moved instantly. Without hesitation, he grabbed Roxy and darted through the chaos. "Stay close," he whispered. "They're amateurs." Drones buzzed like angry insects, trying to trap them. Jeff flowed through the crowd, weaving and dodging with fluid grace. Roxy clung tightly, heart racing. "Go to the maintenance panel," Jeff ordered. "Third from the left, loose corner." Roxy slipped through a side door, finding the panel. Her fingers flew over the wires, working fast. She remembered everything Jeff had taught her: think like a human. Find the cracks, the weaknesses, the gaps. With a spark and a click, she changed the station systems. Lights shifted from soft white to deep red. The temperature dropped sharply. Gravity fluctuated. Drones wobbled, some crashing, others spinning helplessly. Jeff used the confusion. He pushed off a desk, sailed over officers, and landed in a roll that carried him to the exit. His eyes burned with fierce joy. "You're better at this than I expected," he said. They burst into the station's service corridors, hidden from view. Jeff's body was numb from electric shocks, but his spirit was unbroken. "Why do you fight so hard?" Roxy asked as they moved through dark halls. Jeff looked at her, eyes full of pain and pride. "Because peace is fragile. Because silence can be deadly. Because sometimes, being the monster is the only way to protect those you love." They found shelter in a small room filled with strange pods and containers. Jeff walked among them, naming creatures and things too strange to believe. "Humans are scary, but not the scariest," he said. "We tell jokes to hide the monsters inside." Roxy felt the weight of his words. The galaxy's perfect peace was built on forgetting the nightmares. But nightmares still lived. Suddenly, the fog-like bureaucracy entity moved past the door, its presence humming like a storm of paperwork. The station trembled as it flooded the halls. Jeff smiled. "Making problems solve themselves. That's art." They waited, listening to chaos unfold above. Security teams were drowning in forms, orders, and confusion. When the danger passed, Jeff looked at Roxy. "You taught me something, kid. Sometimes, the best way to protect peace is to remind everyone why peace matters." Roxy nodded, her fear replaced by a fierce determination. Together, they would face the galaxy's nightmares. Not with violence alone, but with courage, wit, and heart. Months passed since Jeff's first appearance at the expo. The galaxy was still adjusting to having a human in their midst, a creature they had feared for centuries. Roxy and Jeff had become unlikely partners, teachers in a world that had forgotten how to fight and survive. The council chambers were alive with debate. Some saw Jeff as a danger, a relic of a violent past that could unravel their peaceful order. Others recognized what Roxy and Jeff knew deep down: sometimes peace needed protectors willing to stand between safety and chaos. Jeff had been given a new role, not as a prisoner, but as a consultant, a cultural integration specialist. His job was to teach security forces how to think like predators without becoming monsters, how to protect without losing their humanity. Officer Telk was one of those recruits. He stood in training room 8, watching a group of young officers struggle with a simulation. Pirates had taken the medical wing. Hostages were held. The clock ticked down. The recruits panicked, offering weak plans, negotiations, meditation, hope. Jeff watched quietly. Then Pim, a young officer, spoke up. "We could override the airlock controls." Jeff smiled thinly. "What happens if you cut the power?" 4 minutes left. The recruits froze. Tension filled the room. "Think like humans," Jeff whispered. "Sometimes, you have to be terrible to stop something worse." Pim nodded, steadying herself. "We'll evacuate the entire section. Make them believe we don't care if hostages die." The room held its breath. Jeff added, "While they doubt, someone slips through the maintenance shaft and reverses airlock pressure. Anyone trying to space a hostage gets spaced instead." The recruits looked at each other. Then Pim said quietly, "I'll do it." "Congratulations," Jeff said. "You just thought like a human." "Terrible, right?" Later, after the recruits left, Officer Telk lingered. "In the real scenario," he asked, "how many children died?" "None," Jeff said. "Because someone was willing to be terrible to stop worse things." Meanwhile, in her xenobiology class, Roxy shared human food with her students. Pizza, flatbread topped with strange flavors, spicy and rich. "Smells toxic," her classmate Varric said, eyes wide. Roxy laughed. "Human food is made for survival, not comfort. It tricks your body into thinking you're accomplishing something by suffering." Varric took a bite, confusion giving way to delight. "Why can't I stop eating it?" "Because humans turn suffering into joy," Roxy explained. She watched Jeff train security forces, teaching them to protect, not just hunt. Predators take the weak, protectors hunt those who threaten the weak. Humans were both. One evening, Roxy found Jeff on the observation deck, staring at distant stars. "Rough day?" she asked. Jeff sipped his coffee, bitter and black, a ritual. "My mother's still mad about the kitchen," he said. "Says the scorch marks add character." "Cooking should be dramatic," Roxy smiled. They sat in silence, watching cargo ships drift by, remnants of wars long past. "You miss Earth," Roxy said softly. Jeff nodded. "I miss the idea of it. We fought over scraps until there were none left. Then we fought over the memory of scraps. Humans were good at breaking things. And better at fixing them. Someone has to be the monster," Jeff said quietly. "To keep worse monsters in check." Roxy smiled, feeling the weight of that truth. The universe was full of monsters. Now, there was one on their side. The galaxy was changing. Samara's station, once a symbol of calm and order, now hummed with new energy. Peace was no longer silence, it was vigilance wrapped in hope. And at the heart of this change were two unlikely allies, Roxy, the girl who dared to break rules, and Jeff, the human monster who taught the stars to be afraid of the quiet. Training rooms echoed with lessons of survival disguised as drills. Recruits learned to think like predators without losing their souls. Jeff's sharp grin and rough voice became familiar, a strange comfort in a galaxy unprepared for danger. One evening, on the observation deck, Roxy found Jeff staring into the endless night. His coffee mug steamed in the recycled air, a small rebellion against the sterile world around them. "Pizza night tomorrow?" Jeff asked, breaking the silence. "Obviously," Roxy smiled. "It's a day that ends. And pizza's the only thing you eat now." Jeff laughed, eyes bright despite the scars. "I learn from the best, and the worst. Same thing with humans." They watched cargo ships drift past, tiny lights against the black. Debris from battles no one wanted to remember tumbled in the void. "You miss Earth," Roxy said softly. Jeff nodded, voice heavy with memory. "I miss the idea of it. We broke it. Fought over every scrap until there were no scraps left. Then we fought over the memory." "Humans are good at breaking," Roxy said. "And fixing." Jeff's smile was tired but real. "Sometimes, fixing takes longer." Their work was far from done. The galaxy still held shadows, pirates, plagues, predators lurking between stars. But now, they had a protector who knew what it meant to be feared and to fight. "Someone has to be the monster," Jeff said. "To keep worse monsters away." Roxy nodded. "And sometimes, that monster wears a smile." Together, they stood beneath the endless sky of stars. Monsters to some. Protectors to others. And the universe, vast and uncaring, watched as humanity's last boogeyman poured bitter coffee and shared a quiet moment with the girl who dared to believe. The silence between stars was no longer empty. It was alive with possibility.